Hello and welcome to FlatOut 2, a game first released August 1st, 2006 and only recently got achievements on Steam out of nowhere. I think nobody expected this to happen. So I figure let's make this event a little special. This is a very like an interesting moment in history. Like 2 decade-old games finally getting achievements is really something. In an official capacity, I know retro achievements exist, for instance, but this is an official capacity sort of thing, and it's like, wow, it's pretty surreal that games before the era of achievements finally get achievements. So I figure I could do the stunt portion. I'm pretty decent at it. I think I can offer some tips for people. So I figure why not? Alright, high jump. Let's talk about the car immediately. Certain cars are important for certain reasons. The Afterburner, for instance, which I have a personal liking towards, can ignore small objects like barriers and lights in such a way that it can make things easier. I barely missed 160 there, but that's okay. We could try again. Your actual premise for this is just to hit the gas and preferably using a car that can ignore barriers. You want to just swerve around the first one and then just drive straight pretty much on the very outside. Not too far outside and not too long, because you will get disqualified if you stay outside the main path for too long. Because the game does want you to ideally go through the barrels, but you don't really have to do that. You don't have to do that. Then you want to launch at around 60 degrees. You could do 62 or so. And you want to nudge immediately after you jump, so you get as high as possible. And then acrobatics comes into play, or aerobatics, sorry, comes into play. You tap the accelerate button a little bit as you're peaking, so that you try to peak a little longer. In some stunts, you might want to use the brake to hold back in case you jump too high, and left and right in some other stunts as well. But the premise is just to try to like keep your peak for longer by tapping up a little bit so that you can kind of stay where you want to be, which is as high up as possible. You could even get over the fence if you're good enough. I've only done that a couple of times, but 167 is good enough for the achievement. The next stunt is bowling. You want to try to use a sturdy car like the Rocket because you have bowling balls in your way on the lane. And instead of swerving around them, you can hit them and be fine. It isn't bad to hit one side of the pins. My strategy here is you want to try to aim low, slide across the lane, and then nudge before you would hit the pins so that you careen to the pins in such a way that you can knock all of them down. But the key to that is you want to make sure you hit the first pin in either the immediate left or the immediate right pin, depending on what you're comfortable with. It's flexible, so. But yeah, you ideally want to go for somewhere between like 12 and 16 in terms of angle. You could even go all the way up to 20 safely, and you could even do 10, but the 12 to 16 is the sweet spot, and that should be fairly consistent to hit. Just keep in mind that when you shoot, your first angle is about 8 degrees, so it's almost immediate that you have to let go. This is pretty much the only stunt you get to do this on, where you press the A button to launch, and then you have to let go of it immediately, basically, in order to just launch. No other stunt really has to do this, per se. You usually have to hold it a little bit before you launch, but not here. If you need to move a little bit to the left or the right, use your aerobatics as needed. Just remember not to overdo it, because the more you overdo it, the more drag you introduce and the slower you'll ultimately go. And if you go too slow, you might start leaving pins on the table. So try not to do that. This isn't a perfect strategy, by the way. It's, let's say, 90% consistent. Because the last 10%, basically, your body has to impact the pins correctly. And sufficiently enough. Sometimes that may not happen. And you might get unlucky. But it should be a 90% consistent strat. Maybe even 95. I might even say 95, honestly. If I have to be completely honest with you. It can even be a 95% consistent strat. You can also go for a high version where you impact the pins from the air. But I genuinely think that's less consistent. But that's just me. I prefer sliding. I think sliding gives you more time and a higher chance of hitting the pins. And that's what I feel like I've determined with this. All you need to do is basically impact the middle pin and the pin behind it. You should get it every time. Or close to every time. You might miss one occasionally. It's a bummer if you have to restart it because of that, but yeah, there we go. That's how bowling works. The next stunt is ski jump. Here you can use any card you wish. It also sort of depends on what strategy you decide to use. This is the basic version of it. This is the very basic version, and it should be the version that you might want to consider using. Just to get a overall feel for what you're meant to do here and, you know, where your consistency lies, I guess. It's also perfectly okay to land on the red bit. You don't need to land in the center. So you don't need to go through the skates. You can go around the skates and land well. That's the important thing that's that I need to mention. But the basic premise is you want to be careful about this first curve. Don't fly off the first curve, because it might make your car a little uncontrollable if you do. And second, try to shoot at an angle around 45 degrees. A little lower or a little higher perfectly works. It's fine. You should be able to adapt accordingly. And you need an average of 350 to get to 700. 700 is the achievement. And I got that pretty easily. Alright, so I will try the advanced strategy once just for the setup. So you have an idea of what it's like. But it's a lot harder to execute, especially twice. But if you do execute it once, you should have a much bigger window for the second jump in such a way that you should get this achievement easily. So what you need to do is you need to get rid of the barriers, go back up as quickly as possible, and then go back down. Because obviously you need speed to make your jump. You may not be able to have optimal speed, unfortunately. You'll just have to adapt accordingly, depending on how much time you have, so on and so forth. Now, you may need to shoot at a little bit of a higher angle as a result, but if you do it correctly, you'll get a much better distance. Something like this, you can put with a 300 now. So even if you fucked up a little bit, this would really help you. I'll demonstrate by doing the second jump normally. Just as a overall, you know, just to complete the attempt. Just so we get the idea here. So if you even if you fuck this up a little bit, hopefully not too much. There's fucking it up a little bit and there's fucking it up a lot. Fucking it up a lot would be like hitting the barrier, then you only get like 280 or something like that. Just make sure you get your jump cleanly off. I didn't quite get 350 here, but it didn't matter. I got 390 on my first jump. So that would be it. So the basic premise is be wary of the curve, don't hit the barrier, jump, nudge immediately, use a little bit of up on your aerobatics, the accelerate button, to try and flatten out your top curve so that you slide a little bit more on the highest level so that you get potentially a little bit more distance. And you should be able to get those 350s or close to 350s fairly easily for a combined 700. Not too shabby. The next stunt is curling. The target is 270. You could use any card you wish. There are no obstacles in your way. Just make sure you drive appropriately. Ideally, you do want to try to use a more sturdy car so that you don't slide around all over the place. But you do have a pretty big window of operation here. So you need to try to score 93 times. Or an average of, like, you know, something... An average of 90, I should say. So this is fine. 85 is an okay start. I ideally don't want to move that any further back, so I damage myself further. But I do want to try to get closer with this next shot to the middle. You want to get as close to the middle as possible. The middle is 100. And yes, 100 is definitely possible. So depending on how you jump, you want to try to make sure that you try to land in the middle. Use your nudge at the end, or however you need to use it. You can afford to keep your nudge to where you need it. You don't need it to jump. But ideally, you want to try to jump at a good angle, like at least 20 degrees. 20, 30 degrees is fine. You can even do the full 40. It's fine. But you want to use your aerobatics very well here so that you score well. And that should do it. That's the basic strategy. That's 275. Yes, Frank Malkov beat me, but it doesn't matter. He can go somewhere. Because that name is usually a pain in the ass in derbies, etc. He can go somewhere. But the important thing is you got 270, you're out. You don't need to do this again. Ideally, you really want to do that in single player, by the way. Don't do that with your friends, because your friends will probably screw you over. It's a hot tip. The next stunt is stone skipping. You can use any car you wish. It doesn't really matter too much. It also sort of depends on the strategy you ultimately take. We'll start with a very basic high-end angle strategy for now. Don't be afraid to hit the water with your car a little bit so that you can use your full range of motion. Because if you shoot 40 and do it too early, what happens is you wind up sinking. Now, unfortunately, I hit the back end of the pool without really skipping too much. I could have easily skipped a little bit more. So it's a little unideal. It did reach 400, though, which is what you want to see 3 times. Because you need a score of 1200. We'll try another strategy now. This strategy is a little quirky, but I like it personally. Because it can give a pretty good payoff without going all the way to the back of this pool at the very least. So what you want to do is you want to try to do something like this. Ideally with a few more skips, but that's the basic premise of it. Lastly, let's try a little bit of a lower angle strat, I guess, as a third potential idea. This is probably a little more towards what people would typically do on this level. And that's why people don't typically reach 400, is because it's heavily based on your skips. So the ideal premise here is higher initial jumps can be better, but it's followed by a lot of inconsistency. I'll give one more run. One more like attempt just to like kind of explain what's going on here. Where the inconsistency lies is a lot of it has to do with when exactly you jumped, what you're hitting along the way, how you're hitting the water, whether you're getting perfects on your initial jumps or not, so on and so forth. So I made it almost to the back of the pool just from that, but I didn't get 400 at the same time. There's a lot of ways to do this stunt, but you need to try to find ways to get a consistent above 400 if you can, because you need an average of 400. But hopefully that gives you enough of a range of motion to understand that there's a lot of ways to approach that particular stunt. Then it just comes down to a bit of fortune and consistency. That's basically all it is. Oh, and don't use too much aerobatics, I guess, when you're in the air. That also doesn't help you too much unless you feel like you have to, because you're hitting like a duck or something. The next stunt is Ring of Fire. I personally use the Afterburner here, but technically you can use any car pretty much as you desire. Alright, the basic premise of this is to get 1700 points. You have to go through all 10 rings and land in the water for the cooldown bonus of an additional 50. Try to aim for about 40 or 42. But the most important thing is the aerobatics plus the nudge usage along the way. Hold your nudge for either the middle, or in some cases you may not even have to use it at all. But if you want the most points, you have to try to go for the center of each ring as best as possible. The center of each ring is worth 200 points with a minimum score of 100. And that will do it. That will be sufficient. You just need to do it once. You don't need to do it all 3 tries. You just need to do it once. That's the good part about this stunt. The maximum theoretical score is 2050. Plus 200 for each ring plus the 50 cooldown bonus. So let's review again. Try to shoot it around 40 degrees. If you shoot a little short, you may have to use your nudge early. Try to avoid being too far up or down. And try to make it all the way through. I failed the last ring on that particular try, but that's alright. If you can do it in such a way that you get the center of the rings early and late, you could get well into 1800, 1900 range. But for 1700, you just need to be fairly decent. You need an average of 1700, like 168 or something. No, 165, because you get the 50 points for the cooldown bonus. So you need an average of 165 per ring. So you want to try to aim as close to the center as possible, but do expect, you know, like a 130 at one point and like a 180 at another. Do expect that, because the exact hit probably depends on what part of the body actually hits the spot. So it might be a little deceptive. All I can say is just keep trying. Make sure that you have a pathway through all the 10 rings and just keep trying if it's not working out. Try to aim for the center, at least in the back half. The next stunt is field goal. I personally like to use the Afterburner here, but you could probably use any car you wish here without too much issue. Just remember the whole ignore small obstacles versus having trouble with big obstacles problem. Use what you feel comfortable with. I missed by 2 frames. Wow, that's really unfortunate. I thought that was going to make it for sure. But what you need is a combination of high speed and launching at the right time and at the right angle in order to get this under 14, which is what you need for the achievement. I missed by 1 frame. Oh my god. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. There we go. That makes it. Well, that was a scary set of attempts, not gonna lie. So you want to shoot at something around 16, 18 degrees, ideally, which wastes the least time in the air. But you also need to make sure your initial speed is high. So keep in mind when you're hitting defenders, how hard you're hitting defenders. Sometimes you might hit defenders in such a way that it just doesn't work out. It can happen. But that strategy that I showed you should be consistent enough to get you a 13. There may be something better that can maybe more consistently get you a lower 13 or so. But 13 is pretty good for a field goal. If you do manage to get the sub 14, you should definitely be proud of yourself. The next stunt is Royal Flush. You can use any car you wish here. There is no preference. The car you use has nothing to do with the stunt. This stunt is completely RNG heavy. There are only a certain amount of cards that will appear, and sometimes the cards that you need will not appear. So first, you'll want to pick a suit. Pick your favorite suit, doesn't really matter. You'll want to make a 10, a jack, a queen, a king, and an ace of the same suit to make the royal flush and to get the perfect score of 100. That is the only way you will get the perfect score of 100. The cards are first awarded by their value, and then they are awarded by suit and connectivity. You will get points for suit, for the same suit and connectivity over time. Try to be mindful about what cards have appeared, especially more than once. This is a very bad situation because I know the ace has appeared twice already, and I think the king has appeared twice. But it does come down to luck. Some cards may appear twice in 5 rounds, some cards don't appear, except in certain rounds. It really just depends. All you need to keep going is one of the relevant cards, hopefully. Like right now, I need a jack on my last round. If I don't receive the jack, I don't get to make the royal flush. So the 5th round is usually the moment of truth type of thing. And my jack happens to be there. Nice. Otherwise, it just comes down to making sure that you can aim correctly and use your aerobatics if necessary. Which is why darts is a better thing to do first. That's practice for this one as well, because you definitely want to make sure you hit the right card each round. You don't want to lose the royal flush to something stupid like going over the top or hitting the wrong card. And so there's the perfect score. It is completely random, and you can get unlucky as soon as round 2. It can happen. It will happen if you play this enough times. And all I can say to that is you'll have to try again. There is nothing you're going to be able to do. The next stunt is basketball. You can use any card you wish here. It should be fine. To get 50 points, you don't need to enact any special strategies. You should just have to go for hoops just fine. You'll need to at least go for one of the 9s. But the 10 is not required for 50. And I can show you why. So, I'm aiming for an 8 here. But I'm also getting a thunder dunk. So how does the dunk system work? Well, you need to go down with enough speed in order to get a thunder dunk. You need to be high enough and then just like slam the hoop. It's no different to like NBA pro dunking. The pros tend to slam the ball into the hoop. It's similar to that. You're trying to slam the ball into the hoop. And so you need an average of 10 points per shot overall. You just can't use the same hoop you already used more than once. But yes, the 10 is not required. And it's very hard to even dunk the 10. So typically you're only going to get 10 points or maybe 11 from the 10 for how difficult it is. Aiming for things that are not the 10 allows for a greater range of motion and more reaction time overall. So I just aimed for a 9 there, and I got 12 points because I got a Thunder Dunk as well. If you can just do that 5 times, you will get this no problem. This actually is not too difficult. If you wanted to get the maximum score, though, you have to do a special strategy for the 10 in order to try to get a Thunder Dunk, which actually is possible. It is possible to Thunder Dunk the 10, but you need a very particular strategy to do it, and it needs to work out well. But that's only reserved for maximum scores, which in basketball, the maximum potential is 59. If you Thunder Dunk the 10, the 2 9s, and the 2 8s. So here, all I have to aim for is the 7. I got Thunder Dunks on all 4. I just have to aim for the 7. I can even aim for a 6 if I want to. In fact, I'm pretty sure I can aim for a 5 if I wanted to as well. But we'll aim for the 7. I only got a Slam Dunk here, but that's okay. That's totally fine. I had at least a 1-point window, and I got 55 as it is. So make sure you shoot at around 60. Try to adjust accordingly with your aerobatics, but don't overuse the aerobatics because you could put yourself in a situation where you miss if you're too reckless. Be careful and try to use your best judgment based on the angle you shot at and where you think you're going to go. Each attempt is going to be a little bit different because of that. So I can't say, you know, you should do this all the time or that all the time. It's just that you have a range. You can afford one of the 6s if you want. You could probably even afford one of the 5s. But you have to try to get the 9s if you do that. So that you average out at 50, 10 points per shot. But you have a lot of room to work with. You just need to be consistent at hitting and trying to Thunder Dunk as many shots as you can. If you Slam Dunk one, probably fine. The next stunt is darts. Regular darts with an S, not with a Z like in Yu-Gi-Oh! Season 4. Like the character from Yu-Gi-Oh! Season 4 that's soon coming to Duel Links. Alright, this stunt is basic practice for things like launch timing, launch angle, and aerobatics. This is a very good stunt that you should do first, if anything. These techniques are very important in certain other stunts, and this is a very, very good place to hone in your skills before you try certain other stunts. You'll need a perfect score to get this achievement, and that means you'll need to do 6 rounds correctly. The first 5 rounds shouldn't be too bad. You just have to aim for singles, doubles, and the triple. It's the 6th round that might be the killer because you need to aim for not only the bullseye, but you need the inner bullseye. The outer bullseye gives you half the points, but the inner bullseye will give you the maximum score you need. The maximum score is 250. The single hits will give you 25, the doubles will give you 50, and the triple will give you 75. The final bullseye will either give you 25 or 50 based on whether you hit outer or inner. But yes, this is basically just practice for the techniques of nudging at the right time, aerobatics, making sure you launch before you hit the barrier, launching at a decent angle, getting a feel for how long it takes for you to reach an angle that you want to launch at. These are all relevant. So this is a very good stunt to do first. And it should technically be one of the easiest stunts you can do for an achievement, because the premise is very simple. And there should be no things like randomness or RNG. The only thing that might suck is if a part of your body hits the outer bullseye first, even though you're aiming for inner. That's the only thing that might suck. I will admit, I barely hit inner there. I really, really barely hit inner there. I almost thought it was outer. But that's the only thing that might suck, is if a part of your body hits the outer bullseye first, even though you were trying to go for inner, you might get outer credit only. So that would probably suck. But other than that, It's a pretty simple stunt. It's probably one of the easiest you'll be able to do. The next stunt is baseball, and because of its goal, because of the achievement goal of 400, this may be at least in the top 3 hardest stunts to do in FlatOut 2. It's mostly because it's oddly inconsistent. But there are a few ways you could do this. You could work with the baseball there and go around it. You can knock the baseball away, go back, and try to go for a straight shot. Or you can try to get rid of the barriers and go a little bit further towards the bat. And see if that works for you. I only got 390. That is unfortunate. Ideally, your angle should be 26, 28. 28 is a little more ideal than 26. But both can work. You do want to try to nudge before you hit the bat to give it force. I don't know how it works. It just works, to be honest. But if you can save your nudge, that would also be ideal. So you can do something like this. And then get well into the 400s like you're supposed to. Basically, you're just going to have to adapt according to what your launch is. If you launch too high, you might not have enough speed to go anywhere. If you launch too low, you might not hit the bat. But if you launch at the right distance and hit the bat in the right way, you should be able to get what you need. And if you can save your nudge for a more appropriate spot, all the better. Just be mindful of the fact that if you do decide to use your nudge before you hit the bat, you might have awkward results. But that's pretty much baseball in a nutshell. It is going to be rather inconsistent. You can make it out of the park and fail to meet the achievement because the batted max is 100 and likely you're probably going to hit 90 something. If you wind up getting out of the park, it's likely going to be 90 something. So you need just that little bit extra juice. And also, your aerobatics might also help you a little bit. The whole up thing when you reach the peak, that could help you a little bit as well. The first time I got this achievement, I got exactly 401. So that was as close as it was going to get, really. The next stunt is soccer. You can use any car you want on this one. There is a very important tip into making this one work the way you want it to. Note where the goalkeeper is. Try to pick a side. I couldn't move for a moment. That was a bit awkward. Let's try that again. There we go. For some reason, I couldn't hit the gas. So try to pick a side where the goalkeeper is. Note that side. You want to aim for that side. Because by the time it takes you to go all the way down here, the goalkeeper will have gone through that side one more time. And you'll never have to deal with the goalkeeper's problems. Trying to block you, etc. You need a score of at least 390, and you have to hit all 4 corners once. The closer you hit the corner, the more points you get, up to 100. As denoted by the 4 corners having 100 on them. That's the maximum possible score that you can get for each corner. But if you want to get 390, you just need to have a 10-point window. So you need, maybe 100 is fine. Maybe 2, whatever it is. But 400 is definitely possible. And I guess I'm a little surprised that they didn't ask for 400. But I guess they wanted to make this challenging but not annoying. But 400 is absolutely possible on this. And you might have noticed I got 100 without even... It didn't even seem like I hit exactly the corner. It depends on what part of me passed through the point scoring window. That also matters a lot in terms of what points you get. It might look like you hit the corner, but then something else hit outside of that corner first, and you got like 98 all of a sudden. It happens. That being said, the bottom one should be the easiest to get 100, just because that's really all you need to do. Just try to hit the ground a little bit early and just slide in. That's the best way of dealing with the bottom. So we got 396. That was pretty solid. Keep your angles in the 20 to 30 range for both. You want to aim a little higher for the top goals and a little lower. But then use your aerobatics appropriately if you think you're going to go over or under. Just be careful not to be too aggressive with your aerobatics so that you lose what you're trying to do. And if you're good enough to get consistent 95s or above, you should be able to get to this achievement. Granted, you only have a 10-point window, so you should be getting basically 97, 98, 97, 98 at a minimum. So you'll have to wind up getting like a 95 and 100 then if you want to average things out. But you will need to try to get consistent 95s or above if you want to get what you want here for the achievement. So that's it for stunt mode. I'll just walk through the high scores that I have right now. The only problem is when you load up under the new patches and everything like that, apparently stuff from your old file is no longer there, which is a little unfortunate. It's probably due to how the high scores were saved before, perhaps. There was mention of that in the patch notes. So I'll just walk through some of the things I have. Nothing crazy right now. But if there's a stunt you want me to see go a little bit, take it a little bit further, by all means comment and I'll see what I can do. Until next time, see you later.